If you wanted to buy a domain name, let's talk about domain names. Okay, let's talk about domain names. All right, you want to go to a place like this. This is a nice website. This is called namecheap.com, and you can search for domain names here and purchase domain names, and they give you a fairly decent price on the domain names. I'd like to spend under $15 a year for my domain names. Ideally, I'd like to spend about $8 a year for my domain names. And anyway, so here's you could register a domain, you could search for a domain right here on this site. You can just enter the domain name right here and then click search, and you can see if it's already been purchased, if somebody's basically paying for it and has registered it, and or if no one has registered the domain name, then you could register it and you can put it for .com or .whatever. So I recommend getting an account with a place like this. This is namecheap.com, and setting up some domain names. And once you do that, you'll be able to click on manage your domains, and you can see here that I've clicked on this window. Let me close these. On manage, I've clicked on manage domains, right? And you can see here that you have choices here on how you want to manage your domain name once you've registered it. Now you could host it yourself, you could have someone else host it, you can transfer the domain from another company to this company. You could transfer, there's a lot of things that you can do. So I'll show you some other stuff here. So here I'm logged in to my account, and you can see here that how many domains I have, how many are expiring, so on and so forth. Then let's say this is one of my domains, and if I wanted to, this was host records. So I clicked all host records right here, this one, and then here I can put in my IP address at my home computer, and then when somebody goes to that domain name, if they go to the www, which is actually in this case would be an alias, but in this case it's an A record, it'll take you to that address. Or this here is an A record. For the domain name, it'd take you to that IP address. So you've got two A records set up here. Normally the www would be a CNAME record. I'm not sure how that was working, but anyway, you'd put your IP address of your home server or your company server here, and then that would send you right there. Another thing you can do is you can set yourself up as a name server. So let's click on this tab right here. So I've clicked here on name server registration, and I've got a domain name here, and I could set myself up as a domain name server if I said, okay, NS1, which is short for basically name server 1, and then put my IP address here, and then it says, okay, a name server for this domain name is going to be your IP address or your company's IP address. And you could put a secondary, a couple of secondary DNS servers here and put the IP addresses here, and then this company namecheap.com will use these name servers as name servers for your domain name. Once you've done that, what you want to do is transfer the DNS. So what you would do then is you'd transfer DNS to web host, you'd click transfer DNS to web host, and when you do that, let's see here, then you'd put in the DNS server here. So then I'd say ns1 dot whatever the domain name is, blah blah blah, ilearn.com, right? And so now the DNS would be this new DNS secondary, this new DNS server that you've set up in the name server registration. So the name server registration is basically NS records, and then you switch to this new system. So you can point your domain name once you've purchased it from a company like this. You can point it anywhere. Once you have pointed your domain name that you've registered and purchased from a registrar, right? Like register.com, namecheap.com. There's tons of domain name registrars on the web that you can register domain names with. Once you've done that and you've pointed and transferred the DNS to a different DNS server. In this case, let's say you've got your DNS server here, and then you put your IP address here, your public IP address of your company, or if you have a home server or whatever. You need to know what your IP address is. If you don't know what your IP address is, go to whatismyipaddress.com, and you'll find out what your public IP address is at your company or your home or whatever. So just go to a site like whatismyipaddress.com. So I'll put in my IP address here, right? And then once you've done that, you're going to have requests for DNS requests coming to your to this IP address. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to your router. And so in this case, I've gone to my let's say Linksys wireless router. If you had a Linksys wireless router, and you're going to go to applications and gaming in this version of the Linksys, and you're interested in port forwarding. And so what you'd say is, okay, I'm going to do port forwarding, and I'm going to do it for, let's say, DNS, because you know you're going to be getting DNS requests, right? And I'm going to do it for port 53, which is the port that DNS is listening on. I'm going to do it for both protocols, meaning TCP and UDP. And then you tell it what IP address where your DNS server is on your private network. So on your LAN, if your DNS server is, you know, computer number 250, you'll put 250 here, right? So now it's going to go to 250, you know, in this case 192.168.2.250, and then you click enable, right? And then scroll down and hit save. So now you've allowed DNS requests to come through your firewall, through your router and firewall, to reach your DNS server, who's going to be able to resolve that name for you. So it's not just a matter of telling your domain name registrar to point to your IP address in your DNS server, right? But when it gets to your location, you also have to set up your router firewall to allow that traffic through. So in this case, I've gone to port forwarding, and I'm allowing port 53 DNS to go through, and I'm pointing it at the computer where my server is located.